Welcome to our first birthday bash. We are a collective of 8 photographer women who are working together for the Latin American community. I am Danielle Villasana. I am Sarah Paps. I am Andrea Hernandez Briseño. I am Carla Gachet, Anna Maria Arevalo-Gosen, Joey Salarcon, Marisol Bertal, and Tamara Merino. Well, thank you very much again for joining us today for such an special day for us. Today, again, it's our first birthday, and it's been 1 year where we have worked together, we have grown and we have supported each other. And what matters the most is that we keep on motivating ourselves. And we are immensely thankful, and our gratitude is just endless because of your support. And thank you very much for being virtually with us today. Well, this event is a space to celebrate and to be thankful for all the things that we have done. That's why I would like to share with you our first project, which is called The Nature That Inhabits Us. And then we're going to present you our brand new webpage, and then we're going to open a Q&A session just in case you would like to comment on this project that we're presenting today. Please remember that we have our chat box so you can participate there. And by the end of this event, we are going to raffle 3 of our original photographies that would be sent to your homes. If you want to participate in this raffle, all you have to do is to stay till the end and to answer some of the questions that we're going to ask. I'd like to start by welcoming you to this virtual scenario. I'm honored to be here with you today. Before getting started, I would like to ask Marisol one question. Can you please explain us where this Ayün photography project comes from? Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for your question. Well, Ayün means love, but if we examine its etymology, it means to examine the other person's light, which is basically how the native communities in Latin America perceive the meaning of love, which is basically being able to see beyond and to see the other person's light. And this is what we do. We are working together in order to tell stories, in order to be storytellers, and to actually make of these situations that we're going through a positive scenario. So yes, that's exactly what we want to do with our work. Now let's move on to Tamara. Tamara, a bit more than a year ago, you reached out to Tamara to create a collective. Why did you do so? Yes, thank you very much, Anita. Well, since 2016, I dreamt about creating a collective of women that worked together and actually worked as peers in order to have a project all together. But life was on the way. Anytime that I tried, there was something that happening there. But then the pandemic came. So that's why back in a year back, I just reached Andrea, and then we started to reach to different photographers who were very creative and who actually had very powerful images. And we also wanted to work with wonderful human beings that were committed to their work. For us, this was essential for being able to create this community that we have today. So with this pandemic, we had the chance to actually come together, and we actually had the chance to grow together and to share in the distance, because we are all in different countries. And that's the way that we started to learn from each other. And today, each one of us actually plays a key role in this collective. And we are very strong, and we are actually playing a very important role within this now new community. Well, yeah, I actually remember the very first time that we got together to talk about this collective. I remember I was very nervous, and I was basically just saying, I do, as if I was going to get married. But yes, I accepted, and I remember that was a very happy day. And as you already know, we created our first project that is called The Nature That Inhabits Us. And Andrea, I would like you to tell us what this project is about, and if you could please tell us a bit more about this project. Of course, uh, all together, we were working on human rights, and our work also has to do with writing, video, different media, or different artistic expressions. So with this, we started to explore different issues that had to do with the pandemic, such as the environmental exploitation, contamination, pollution, and the damage that the human being is doing to nature. So that's why we started to explore how the human being is connected or is dependent to nature. So what happens? Basically, we wanted to explore what happens when this link gets broken. And I think that this pandemic has enabled us to actually connect back with nature and actually with our people. So this sample or this project is showing this a very close relationship that we have with nature and how we are dependent or how the human race depends on nature as well. Well, with all that said, we would like to show you some results of this project that for us was very important to unify our different standpoints, which actually was able to be shown as a single story in a very harmonic way.
Go.
Look all around you. This is all Earth. Woo-hoo.
We will not fall anymore under your deceptive spell. Empty delirium, endless frenzy. Every growing solitude, the human game. From the grave of our hands, we stand and we flourished. We were silenced, but we will be heard. We were silent, but we will be
Hace como un pingüino.
Sí.
¿Y la vaca cómo hace cuando sos vaca?
Cuando soy una hormiga te voy a morder.
Y las hormigas cuando le pisas el hormiguero se enojan y te muerden.
seen this video tons of time, but I always get excited anytime that I see it. It is just amazing to see how this video got together with just one single voice. This video was originally produced in 3 different chapters. The first one has to do with the destruction of the environment that actually contributed to having this pandemic that we're going through nowadays. Marisol, you were the one in charge of this first episode or this first chapter. When we started with this pandemic, I had to think about my routines, my habits, and how I could make a new understanding out of this new situation. This contact with nature and this equilibrium with our environment has never seemed so visible as it is now. This pandemic has brought many economical issues along, and it has also bring along many changes in the social structure that we were used to. But it has also allowed us to have some time to think again about the way that we were living and the way that we were having this relationship with nature. So this project is called The Journey Inside, and which basically it had to do with everything that I thought while I was in a lockdown and how I could reach some peace while being at home. So here I could see how I was protected, and actually I started a journey through the Gulf of Mexico, and I could see how the water in this Gulf became blue turquoise again, thanks to this moment where people were in lockdown. So having this new point of view where I was in a lockdown and then I had to start a journey, I could see this dichotomy in a better way. So I could see how our environment was basically connected to this habitat, to this environment. And I could see how our fingerprints were not anymore in the streets, but we were growing inside. If we could see basically the birds on the beaches and the blue water having their colors back, thanks to the lack of tourism. Well, the Gulf of Mexico has also been called the Sea of Pollution, with all of the hydrocarbons that have been spilled and all of the harmful effects that they have felt because of the oil exploitation. Some other of the problems that they have experienced in this region has to do with all of the pollution that we have here, because of the rivers that connect to this sea bring along many different pollutants. So with this project, we wanted to show the resilience of our bodies and the resilience of nature and how nature struggles to survive. So this is just pretty much a part of this experience, part of this journey. All of these photographies show pretty much my diary and what was my journey like. Thank you, Earth, for bringing us back to your core. Thank you for showing us what the pathway is, because you're showing us what perfection is. I would love to fly with you. I would love to be there with you in my body. And in the evening, I was there and I felt the first drops of water and I received your peace. I feel naked. I feel vulnerable before you. And you are everything. You are healing my soul. You're healing my body. You are strong. I belong to you. And when I forget about you, I forget about myself. Mother Earth, there are no words to describe you, because you are before every single language. And well, I would like now to open the floor to Andrea. Andrea, you were in charge of the second chapter or second episode that talks about all of the different benefits from nature, all of the different gifts that we receive from nature. So, Andre, could you please tell us how all of this new situation affected Venezuela, and how do you interpret this new reality in your project? Thank you. Thank you very much. I love anytime that I listen to you talking about your project, I feel I discover something new. My project, or this second chapter, is called Mango Season. So every single year we have a mango season. For some people don't even wait for these mangoes to drop, and actually they hit the trees to get these fruits. But this year, with this mango season in Venezuela, it was especially important because it was actually even more difficult for us to access food given the poverty and the crisis we're going through. The United Nations Environment Program mentioned what the food security means in countries like Venezuela. So it means that 2 from 5, between 2 and 3 out of every 5 Venezuelans suffer from poverty and hunger. And I think that this is very important to pay attention to this aspect. So I decided to learn how to actually work on this kind of photographies, because I wanted to show this on my pictures, to see all of this in these analog photographies, to have a space for reflection. This pandemic allowed us, or has made more people to be vulnerable towards a scarcity because there is no access to food. It is actually ironic that we don't have oil, even though we are an oil producer country. It affects every single aspect of our lives, even the health sector. And we have to be mindful that we have many different job opportunities, but they're very scarce for some people. So when we had this pandemic last year, everything just got suspended and life actually went back to normal. I don't know if you remember that at the beginning, everyone was just focused on cooking or their household activities. I had so much time that I actually sat down in the garden of my parents to actually look at nature, to see how the grass grew. And this is for real. I just sat there to see how slowly everything grew. So this actually awakened me, and that actually moved me to reinvent our toolkit to actually survive. Now, with the mango season, is one of the most beautiful gifts that we receive from nature. The ones that are lucky, we can buy some other ingredients to make some sweets. But those that can grow their food, can grow their plantains, can grow their food, or their papaya. They use some herbs that are in the wild to actually season their food. And of course, we have arepas as well. Something that I would also like to tell you is that all of these images actually were shared with all of our sisters in this Ayun community, and they inspired me to leave all of my fears behind. And I actually started to walk all of these pathways to discover these new images, to discover these new stories that I needed to tell. One of the things that marked me is that some of the people that I met actually eat twice a day, not 3 times like we are supposed to. Some of them because of COVID, and actually it was important for me to actually have the chance to sit down to share a meal with them. For some of them, it was the only one they were going to have that day. So it was very touching to be part of these stories. But you know what? These stories are also telling us how people figure their days out. Because actually this would be somehow, Garcia Marquez, I think, would be jealous of all of the stories that I got to know. And with this, I understood that we needed to go back to our roots. Now, Carla, I would like to, I'm honored to introduce your work. You work in the third part of this project that has to do with the environment and the quality of the human being's life. So what was it like for you to have this this project with you were with your son, and what were the consequences of this collaborative work that you were in? Thank you very much, Andre. And I love your pictures. I love that you see some pictures that we had the chance to see some pictures that we didn't even see back in the day. So now, well, I am going to show you this project that I had together with my daughter. So when pandemic started, Noel was 6 years old and our lives just changed drastically. So we weren't able to go visit our grandmothers or their grandmother to help us out with them, or we weren't able to go out and we were afraid of going out. At the beginning, it seemed to be kind of a game where we had to stay all together in a lockdown and we were trying to, let's say, learn to live together again. The very first months, we had to go through very intense situations and situations that were in the end always there, but they were intensified because of the pandemic. So we started with a therapy. That was the very first time that we went on a therapy. And we actually understood how we could work on our wrath, on our angriness. And some of these things were there, but we didn't know how to deal with those things. So our only way out was to actually go for a walk in the afternoons where there were, at the moment, where our neighbors were not around. So what did you like the most about going for a walk? It was very nice, and I felt quite good. I had the chance to run away and to do all of the things that I wanted to do. Okay. So this freedom was our therapy. It was our new routine, our new right. And every single day we would explore new pathways. We actually were able to free the tension we had as well. We were trying to do our best with our jobs, with our different occupations, and of course, cleaning the house. So after that, we came back home or we sat down anywhere in the pathway to actually have some snack. So I told Nawal that we should actually picture all of those different scenarios that we were in. So what did you like the most about taking these photographies? I love the filters. So Nawal becomes expert about the filters on my phone, which I have no idea how to work around. So we started with this project all together. And there are some studies that have also said that by being in contact with nature, you can reduce stress. Just by being in contact with the ground and playing with the ground, you can actually free some tension. So Mother Earth actually healed us. And at some point, we actually adopted 2 cats. And that's the way that we basically brought the nature in our house, in our home. And all of the different animals that we actually welcomed at our home. So these pictures became pretty much a diary that tells a story in which we are recognizing ourselves. We became pretty much a clan. Now that I look at these pictures, I can see how we grew as a family. I can see how my kids actually grew thanks to the different arguments they had, thanks to the different experiences they had. I could also see how seasons changed and how everything that actually came to live, there was a moment in which it died or they died. So we actually had the chance to look at the world from a different perspective, and pictures pretty much became the tool to document everything we saw and to play around. So we don't take things as seriously as we used to do. So Noel's father told us that sometimes we go different ways, and sometimes it's because Noel goes running away, and the best way to actually come back together is to call each other just like this. And Noel is going to show us how that goes. Thank you, Noel. And now, Ana Maria, I would like you to describe what was your experience like and what was this nature project for you and your attempt to picture the kids that most of the times you weren't very close to. Noel, I love the filters that you use, and this is just a wonderful team, the one that you made up. Okay. So my project is called Natura Belaulandia, which comes from Euskera, which is the language that is spoken in the Basque country that I live in. And yes, it was complex. It was complex to actually picture these kids. And let me tell you what I did. Natura Belaunaldia is 19 pictures of 19 of the activist kids that work from their home. And they're telling us their story pretty much from their homes, which is the place where they were at. As I was in Europe, it was obvious that I had to actually talk to these activists in the environment. And given that in Spain we had very strict measures, I had to be very strategic to actually reach these kids. So I would start with a phone call. I would start pretty much with this phone conversation, telling them what the project was about. And I actually gave them two different possibilities for them to actually picture themselves. They need to send me some videos of their rooms so I could see where the light was coming in. So the first option was to actually go to their homes and actually take a picture of them. Or if they were under COVID threat, they would prefer to have a distance portrait. So if that was the situation, I would go to a cafe or somewhere nearby their homes. I would teach them how to do a successful portrait with my camera. So they would take my camera and the tripod, and I would call them via Zoom, and I would actually guide them through taking these pictures. And this actually worked out very well. And I bet you cannot tell the difference between the pictures that I took and the pictures that they took themselves. So this basically happened thanks to their parents, and I will always be grateful to them. Each one of these pictures represent their thoughts towards change. So it means less pollution or less use of plastic. Most of them were concerned about pollution in water. Some of them expressed their concern about not being able to go out in the nature, and they felt as if they were birds in a cage, and some of them had panic attacks. And there were some other reasons to protest during this lockdown. They feel they need to demand their governments to have a more green scenario with more awareness towards our environment. So one of them told us that I would like to have a world where people is aware about the relationship they have with nature, and I would like to understand what's the root of the problem, what's the cause of the problem. We are killing what is giving us life. Our best vaccine has already been created, and it's called nature. Or Alex de Fryan from Future Bilbao, who's 19-year-old, told me about the future after pandemics. He said that the diminution of CO2 with this pandemic has been positive. But are we going to learn anything out of all of this? Or are we going to increase all of these emissions after we get out? I was impressed to see their awareness and how concerned they were about correct our mistakes. Our main role players in these stories were telling us the importance were telling us about the importance of changing our mindset. And the way that I would like to run my projects, I would like to show some efforts or to show pretty much through my stories how these people are making different efforts to avoid future pandemics. We don't know what the future may bring, but we know that this generation is pretty much struggling to recover this storytelling that we have with our nature. And I think it is essential that we listen to them, support them, and learn from them. So now I'm going to introduce Tamara Merino, wonderful Tamara Merino. Tamara, your work highlights the role of nature in our lives while exploring this relationship or this solitude you have at home without any nature, but in cohabitance with your mother and with son. So can you tell us what was your process like? Thank you, Anita. Thank you very much. And I want to say, I want to congratulate you on this spectacular job that you did. This is pretty much a reinvention. So you actually made it possible and you actually found a new way to do your job. And yes, you were right. I couldn't tell the difference between the ones that you took and the ones that they took. So thank you very much for sharing with us this experience. So I think that in this experience that I've had, I've always been the one showing other people's lives. But with this pandemic, I had the chance to actually turn the camera towards myself because I had never done it before. I had never used the self-portrait as a photography mechanism, and I had never portrayed what happens at home. So I can tell you that this was a gift. So this is pretty much my lockdown time, which is basically a portrait of my intimacy, which is a symbiosis that we created within this period of time, because we were more than 143 days in four walls in a 14th floor, on a 14th floor. And I actually wondered many times about what happens when people are not allowed to be in contact with nature. So thanks to this question, I started to explore how the lack of nature actually affects us in emotional and social terms, as well as our mental health. And on the other hand, this confinement that we were living everywhere in the world also gave me the opportunity to explore new narratives. And thanks to this, I had the chance to explore quotidianity of my mother and my son. But I also started to use the self-portrait to actually include myself in this story and to be able to tell my story. And this was basically kind of a therapy for myself because I was able to tell my story. But even more than that, I was able to start to understand myself and to understand what was going on with my head in my head and how could I survive these days. And I think that it was this, let's say, this movement or this transition of feelings, the one that actually brought me to this experience, to having this archive material, such as the picture that I have just shown, or some others as the ones that I'm showing right now, between the intimacy between my mother and my son. So even though I felt or we felt as caged animals, I think that we were able to connect with our inner self. And actually, I got to the realization that we depend on nature. Even though nature grew without us, we can understand and we can see how nature actually inhabits us and is within ourselves. And we can understand those things through our different photographies. And with all of this project, I had the chance to see something that was very important. Actually, I went through two quarantines, and in this second quarantine, I felt as if I were a new mother, and different from the very first quarantine. I was very anxious. I was anxious about myself, about the world. In the first one, I was hopeful, but in the second one, I was very concerned. But with this project, I understood that even though we were in a lockdown and we were confined, because it was special because it was imposed, we were forced to be at home. But it also made me think that if you have the freedom to be at home, then the feeling is different. With these quarantines and with these lockdowns, it was different because I was forced to be at home. So it was special for me. And actually, with this quarantine, I started to associate this quarantine with motherhood. And there were many questions with no answer. There were many reflections. Let us understood this as nothing that is positive or negative, but by portraying my motherhood in these days actually helped me to heal my mother, to show her that this endless motherhood circle starts with her, and she's the beginning of my own motherhood. And if it hadn't been because of the pandemics, I wouldn't have been able to live this moment, to explore these new realities. So I think that this is one of my most important projects because of all the different things that I discovered, which was sharing tons of time or sharing time with my mother and my son 24/7. So Johis, with this, I would like to introduce Johis, where you explore the relationship with women in your family. So what was your reaction and what was your search on, or what was this process like with your family? Thank you very much, Tammy. And before getting started, I would like to say that one of the pictures where you are feeding your son was one of the first pictures that I saw during the quarantine. And I felt that there was a moment, or that I had to pause for a second to picture what my life was like at the moment, and to see this wild motherhood relationship that we established at home. And let's say that that was my inspiration to stop looking at this quarantine or this lockdown as a confinement, but rather as an opportunity to grow. Being afraid of losing myself made me come back to my inner self and to my ground, my nature. We are ground, we are the soil that regenerates, we are the soil that grows every single day. My life is there to tell stories, and this time I wanted to tell my own story. So for more than 50 years my family moved from the country to the city. My grandmother, my mother, my great grandmother, my aunts, all of them got away from their town that was Gosotambwa, and they had to move to the city. So all of the knowledge they had on growing food, on caring for animals, and the community life are pieces of knowledge that I have and that are sometimes lost because of the cosmopolitan life. So ever since the quarantine started, we started with a journey of rediscovery. So we go back to this reconnection with nature, starting from the family, this transcendence of knowledge that is passed on by women from generation to generation in a world where we are exposed to individualism and lots of information. This pandemic brought us to the simpleness of life, to how simple life can be. So this conception of life, or how life could be perceived in this new reality. My mother is a doctor, and for a long time we weren't able to see each other. So this was the first picture that we took after a long time on my birthday. Earth as a goddess, as a fertility goddess, show us how we can go back to it and go back to life itself. If we go back to life itself, we want to embrace it, and we would like to re-encounter it and rediscover it. women and the environment. This relationship is key. Women have this relationship with earth, and they are the one managing the natural resources in many communities. According to many different studies, this nature has an effect on what the identity of oneself and the identity of all people. So who we are, and if we do not understand who we are and what this natural relationship is like, it is not possible to understand our relationship with our mothers. This health sanitary crisis that we are facing nowadays has brought us to have new questions and to understand new realities. We want to prioritize the exploitation of our natural resources. And now we have a lot of hints on what we can do. But above all, we need to ask ourselves, what have we learned from our mothers, and what are we going to leave behind for new generations? So I was born from you, and I am coming back to you. So now I am going to introduce Danielle Villasana. Danielle, through different pictures you took, you showed us different issues that have been experienced through this pandemic. And you have also come up with different ways to face this new future that is coming. So can you tell us what was your creative process like? Thank you very much, Joyce. But before getting started, I would like to say that I love your job, and I am honored to have been part of your process, because when we were back in the webinar in Jogso, I was mind blown to look at your picture, to see your pictures, because this is just pure magic. And I feel I am never bored whenever I see your pictures, because every single time that I look at them, I see something different. And it is just magical to see, to look at your pictures. And actually, Joyce has been awarded many different prizes with this project. So please make sure you check all of our members' jobs, because they're just amazing. Well, to get started, if it is true that we're exploring these crossroads between the humankind and nature within this specific situation, these pictures are pretty much expressing what it means to be in this difficult scenario that we're going through right now. Latin America is the ideal scenario to explore these crossroads, because it is characterized by extremes. It has abundance in nature, but it also, as you know, when many different regions around the world, there are many other situations that have been caused by the humankind. Given that I was in Istanbul, and of course Istanbul is very far away from Latin America, and I was not able to travel to come to Latin America, I had to use some of uh, the files that I had, because yes, it is true that I have traveled around Latin America for a long time. So this was pretty much an exploration to use my files and my archive to create very interesting pictures. So I had the chance to pretty much put together different files or different pictures in order to transfer these feelings that I had, or to have these crossroad feelings. So this picture, of course, for me, it means, or it is a very beautiful memory for myself. It is pretty much an action, or it is a demonstration against the environmental change or climatic change in Guatemala. So together with the previous picture, with this one, with the traffic in Lima, Peru in 2020, and the same year where the pandemic was got in Peru. So Peru was one of the more congested cities around the world. So by putting together these two pictures, it creates this new image with a double exposure. So it was very fun to actually explore with different images and with different matchings, because some images would never work, but some of them would work and some of them were just in the wrong place. But full of patience, with a lot of patience, I created new images that includes construction places, organic farms, gold mining. Thank you very much. Now you can go ahead. You can see how, or for example, garbage cleaning or malls. So I wanted to combine those extremes in order to actually transmit this message. And in the meantime, while we get more access to the vaccines, and now the cities are being reopened and COVID cases are ceasing, I hope that the societies start thinking about what the future holds and how we can actually think about our past with all of the issues that we had, or we can also walk to our future by being aware of our nature and having in mind the limited natural resources we have. So it is very simple. If we have these lessons to our future, if we don't have these lessons for our future, we are actually under the risk of repeating the same mistakes that actually brought us to this pandemic that we're living today. And together with the climate change, our behavior, our reckless behavior, and our excessive use of natural resources would bring us back or would take us to our own extinction. So we already know what the future may hold. So it is a responsibility to change that relationship that we have with the environment and with nature. So that's the idea of our project, to ask our societies what is the kind of future that we want to have. And that's it. Thank you very much. So now I would like to open the floor to Sarah Pabst. Well, Sarah, you documented the magical encounters that you have with nature, that you have with your daughter Elena, and also your husband, and what you had to go through in Argentina, which I thought it was very touching. I remember you said that you had almost 4 hours a day to go out, and I thought it was very touchful. So I want to ask you, why did you decide to tell this story, and what was your surprise? What did you come up with this? Well, actually, I had never seen the original pictures of your project, and I never thought they were the pictures that you were talking about. And it was amazing to see those pictures. So thank you very much. And it is a very good example on what you can do when there is nothing to do. So it is definitely true that there is always something to do. So thank you very much for that. Now, let me tell you about my chapter, or within this project of the nature that inhabits us, that is pretty much coming from a need of documenting my lockdown. So I started with a documentary perspective. So I was pretty much the CSI agent at home. In Argentina, we started with this quarantine in March the 20th, 2020, and we thought that it was going to be over soon. And I thought it was going to be just a couple of weeks, just 2 or 3 weeks. But in the end, we had to be there for more than 4 months. And we had to go to Germany, but it actually lasted for more than 8 months. So I felt I was trapped as if I were an animal, and I couldn't go out. I couldn't go out to nature. I couldn't do anything. And everything was just out of place. But somehow it had to work. So there was my daughter, who at the moment was 2 years and a half. And the first month, we couldn't even go out to the doorstep. So after a month, I realized I was pregnant. So I realized I was pregnant, and there were a lot of emotional days. And at the end, my body concluded with this pregnancy. It was as if life pretty much came to a pause and we have to stop, and it was halted. So I was very nostalgic. I was very sad at the moment. And I didn't even understand why was I so upset about the life that hasn't even fully started. And I couldn't understand why my body had ended up with this life. But I think that my body knew what was going on. And I think I knew I was pregnant, and I knew that I was gonna miscarriage this baby. So I just took the camera and I just moved, and I just started to move with my cold. So if I could go out 4 hours a day, I started to picture some portraits and to show these shadows and these lights that were surrounding me at the moment. And of course, there is some sort of sadness within these pictures, and I started to heal, and I became aware of this nature that was around there. And I think this is especially true for women, because I felt this women energy that bring us this resilient spirit. And here we need to talk about something that is considered to be a taboo, which are miscarriages. And I thought that this pandemic is pretty much kind of a metamorphosis, which because as we know, human beings are not able to go through a metamorphosis, but somehow we did. And this project was also the chance to express many different feelings. So here, my motherhood and my profession came together as a one single idea. Painting was also very important with this project, because I explored many paintings, and actually lights were very important to me. And these fall season lights that we get in Argentina was something that I took advantage of. And in this picture, you can see what the relationship is with pictures, because I could see how women in painting were understood, or were always portrayed with one breast coming out. So that's what I wanted to show here, and actually by showing what this loss meant for me. And I would also like to take the advantage to actually thank all of my Ayun sister, because thanks to them, I was able to speak up about a topic that I think is very important. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing your story with us and opening up this window to your home and to these intimacy moments that you had during this lockdown. And not only to Sarah, but all of you, thank you for your incredibly well performed works. So now let's move on to a surprise that we have for today. So from today on, we have a new space for you to actually check our job, check our work. ayunfotographas.com. So this website was created by Juan Noguera. He was incredibly patient to actually put together all of our material to build this new home, to actually put together all of our projects here. So that's why we're incredibly thankful to Juan. And here we're presenting ourselves as a collective, and here we share our projects. So there are many different ways to get to the nature that inhabits us. Here you can see a summary, a kind of an abstract on what the project is about. And you can also see some of the pictures that are part of this project, that made up this project. So if you, for example, hover through some of the pictures, you can see the story of the picture and also some biographical notes. I love this part, which I gotta confess is one of my favorite parts, which is pretty much how do we introduce ourselves as a collective. So here we are, all of us. You can actually go or hover through the names, and then you can see the different profiles. There are many different ways to get to the profiles, to our profiles. Over here to the left-hand side, you can also check the different profiles. So you can access to our profiles through here. So let me go to Joy's profile that has this video. That is a short video that we had at the beginning when we introduced ourselves. So you can see all of the all of the story of this incredibly talented woman. So you can see where our artist is located. And if you want to check her portfolio, you can actually check her very own portfolio. So now let's go back to our menu and let me show you the compilation of the different chapters from this project, The Nature That Inhabits Us. So here we have the different chapters. And if you click down here, you'll be able to access the description of the whole project. And if you click, let's say over here, over Sarah's chapter, this is going to take us to Morning Song, which is the chapter that she was talking about just a few minutes ago. So here you can see a detailed description on what this chapter means. And down here, you can see a slider. Let's say it's a kind of a slider box where you can see the different pictures from her chapter, from Sada's chapter that belongs to The Nature That Inhabits Us project. So here you can access the different pictures or photographies. And last but not least, I would like to go back to our menu and to the About tab. Here we have expressed our identity as a collective. And here we have pretty much the story that joined us, that brought us together, because all of this project just brought us together as photographer women that have a specific identity that is linked to one Latin America identity. And everything is both in Spanish and English. And well, that's pretty much what we have to share with you today. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. I know this is our collective, but congratulations. I'm very proud of everything we've done. I'm very happy you with this result because it was a huge work on all of us. So it feels really good to actually be able to see it live. So now we are going to get started with the Q&A session. So please, if you have any question, you can just write it down in our chat box, or I'm sorry, not in our chat box, but in our Q&A box. And we are going to do our best to answer most of these questions, but I know we're running out of time, but we'll do our best. And remember that we have a couple of surprises for you. So we are not going to spend too much time on this Q&A session. So there is a question by Lucy. And this question goes to Andre. As we have already commented on this, I think it was a specific need, a sisterhood need that I had to be able to understand that photography, even though it is shown, it is usually perceived as a very solitary profession, it is actually a collective work because you depend on people and you can actually have to work with people that is actually helping you to access different locations, and you have to work with some other people on basically who you are going to work with, and also your models or the people you are photographing. And especially for us with this Nature That Inhabits Us project, some part some part was edited and by Carla. Let's say that Carla was our guide, or let's say she was our light for this project to actually be come to a conclusion. And actually, when at the beginning when you started with this project, I didn't know what my way was. I didn't know what the route was. But whenever I started working with these sisters that I now have, I felt I was not alone anymore. And now all of this is materialized in our website. After a long time and after many different efforts, Carla and I put together all of this material, and Carla especially thought about all of the sequence in such a way that everything were more smooth and this storytelling were smooth. And in order to do so, we have to have a collective effort. Wow, yes, that's true. I don't want to say that we are not special, but I love seeing that, and we can see that there are even more and more collectives, because for many years, um, this industry was individualistic, where you didn't work with anyone else and there was a lot of competition. But now we have discovered that there are different ways of working around photography. So thank you for mentioning that, Andre. Wow, there are many different questions that we can see in our chat box. Tamara, there is a question for you. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do the translation in my head. So what was your inspiration, or what's your inspiration to take pictures? You know that we're talking about quarantine and lockdowns, but what was your inspiration, or where is your inspiration coming from whenever you're taking a picture? I know you've already talked about this a bit, but if you could actually deepen into this idea, that would be great. Yes, of course, you have been my inspiration. I think that in this photography moment, the most important thing is to find a reflection of yourself. So every single picture becomes a reflection of your emotions. And once you're able to understand something through images and they're actually telling you a story, I think that's the end of photography. That's the main objective of any photography. So I think that my inspiration to take pictures was pretty much to understand my very own feelings, to understand what I was feeling through these tough times, and through actually having these moments that I was sharing with my mother and with my son. And I think that that's something that we had never had. We finally had it. And there was a moment in which we shared together. So this was my mother and I. Uh, this was our together project, let's say. This was basically being born of this sharing opportunity from this moment that I was actually recognizing myself. And well, yes, that's true. And actually, by looking at your project, it is pretty much like the very first time as I saw it. And it takes courage to do something new. And I think that all of us, and I think that many different people through this pandemic time have found different ways of expression. And I think that this is a very good way to show our courage, because you never know what it's going to be like in the end. And you have shown us the beauty of taking risks. So now there is a question for Sarah, who's now in Germany, but she lives in Argentina. So now we have a perfect question for you, and also Anita, because you are constantly changing scenarios. So how do you work? How do you work collectively by being in different continents? Well, it's not easy. That's not an easy question. I think that the most important thing is to have a common ground and to see how we can make different interpretations out of it. In order to work in a collective, we need to actually have to have a common ground where we can unify our voices. At the beginning, it was a very interesting challenge because each one of us has a very different ways to tell stories or different ways of thinking, different mindsets, we're just pretty much different people. So we learned from each other and we learned out of this process, and thanks to Carla's edition and everything that we went through, I was very excited. And that's why I get always excited anytime that I see the video, because you actually forget whose picture is whose. So another thing that is important about living in different continents, I can speak for myself. I can tell you that I live in Argentina and I never thought I would be in Germany, but this pandemic, let's say, situation brought me to new scenarios. So now I'm here, and now I'm just gonna wait some time here till my until my baby is born. My new baby is born. So now I'm working in a new project because now we have another project that we're working on. And we have to think about what we are going to be working on and what's going to be our narrative or storytelling. And in such way, we are going to handle those issues that we had the very first time that we were together in this project. So now we know what we need to pay attention to. And let's say that it's going to be easier for this second time, but there is a lot of planning involved. There is a lot of planning and a lot of dialogues, a lot of conversations. Yes, and a lot of Zoom sessions, and yes, and tons of conversations. And we actually have a Google Drive folder that we work on all the time. So yes, there's a lot of organization involved. Now we have many other questions, but we're going to go through them very quick because I think that we already have our winners of the raffle. I'm very excited to actually announce who the winners are. So 2 more questions. One goes for Carla. And this is a collective of 8 women, 8 different women. So Carla, can you please tell us how we have unified our voice? And given that you have been this collective's editor, can you please tell us your experience? Well, it was not an easy job to do because we are very different women and the way that we tell stories are completely different. But at the very beginning, we knew that we wanted to have just as if it were a single story and what's his or her relationship like with nature. So that's what we tried to do, to have a single story so we wouldn't have isolated stories, but a single one, which is pretty much what we wanted to do. In Ayün, we are different individuals, but in the end, we want to collaborate together to create new stories and how we can tell a bigger story, not individual story, but a bigger one. Wow, that's really nice. And thank you very much for all of your efforts, because you've done magic with your hands, with everything that you've done. So you're our in-house editor. And last but not least, questions. And Anita, could you please tell us what's coming next Is there another project coming on? What's next? Yes, we do have another project. Given that we don't have that much time because we need to move over with the raffle, I'm going to tell you a bit about the project that we have in hand. We want to work with mother health or motherhood health and the different issues that Latin American women have to be mothers. And we want to tell this story from 8 different countries, and we would like to start as soon as possible. That's why we have a print sale this year by social media. If you want to participate, if you want to tip in, you can do it. And I think that next year we're going to have our second baby birth, and we're very excited about it. Wow. I would like to say that we have answered most of the questions, if not all of them. So I'm very happy to announce that. So Joyce, I think that Joyce will tell us who the winners are. So there is a lot of expectation. So let's wait for the app to tell us who the winners are. This raffle was done with all of the participants that are joining us today. And given that we promised this, we are going to raffle 3 prints from our collective Ayün, and the winners are, so let's dribble our batteries. Paul Bellinger, is he here? Please raise your hand, or let's please in our chat box, let us see that you're here. Perfect. Another winner. And so I'm going to announce who the winners are, and you have to say that you're here in our chat box. The next one, Tara Fried and Victoria Raso. Please say me, I'm here in the chat box. Let us know that you're there. So we have confirmation from Paul, from Victoria. Congratulations. Tara Fried, please raise your hand. And please be sure that you will receive our birthday bash present within these days. And there is another surprise. So Anita, the floor is yours. What's the second surprise? Give me 1 second. So I'm gonna move over my another room. In the meantime, we are going to thank all and each one of you because we wanted to thank for your support and the funding from the National Geographic Society for this project. And we would also like to thank all of the ones that actually believed in us for this very first year. So thank you very much. So thank you for Pananur, the John and Collective Women Photograph and Photo Feminas. And also special thanks to Almeida Claudia Carreras, Santiago Escobar Jaramillo, and Michelle Garchet.
We will not fall anymore under your deceptive spell.
thank you all for joining us today to join us in this celebration. We are honored to see all of this love and all of those messages that you've shared with us. So thank you very much. We're immensely grateful. And of course, you know how to contact us now. And hopefully we can keep on working towards the future with more and more people. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank Karen and Lucas for the interpretation service. That was amazing. Hopefully you had the chance to enjoy our birthday bash, and hopefully you can join us for future times. Thank you very much. We love you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. I think we're still live. We need to close our webinar, so our guests don't get to know that we're alcoholic. No, we're still live. I'd love to see all of the faces. That's the only downside of having this. For example, my mother is still here. And she was saying that you're not alone yet. Please don't say anything weird yet.